Alright, here we are in match 2. Let's go ahead and take the play. Hopefully we got a good hand. Alright, well, we got a decent setup against an aggressive deck. Not so much against most others, but I think given this cycling land that we have, we got enough time to maybe buy some turns against an aggressive or even a mid-range deck. I think we can afford to keep this hand. I'm probably going to hold on to the Irrigated Farmland. Although if I knew I was up against a control deck, I'd probably just go ahead and play it anyway, but let's start things off with a port town, and hopefully we'll draw into some action once we have identified what our opponent is playing. Usually you can tell, for the most part, by their first land drop, so okay. I'm going to put them on maybe a Teamer Energy or Teamer Marvel deck. We'll have to wait and see. Immolating Glares are not the strongest against that deck, but we'll see what happens exactly. I revealed a Plains to my port town, but without really thinking, I just played the island. Very minor thing, likely not to lose many percentage points on our probability of victory here, but something to keep in mind. Always try to give your opponent as little information as possible. When it is free, try to avoid that. Probably going to cycle our farmland. I would expect our opponent plays like a Servant of the Conduit, or even like an Attune to Ether that they couldn't have on turn 1 with the Sheltered Thicket, but more likely a Servant of some kind. But yes, almost certainly a Teamer deck here. Energy or straight Marvel. Have to draw into some action to deal with that, that's for certain. Let's see what play our opponent has waiting for us, but very likely going to cycle our farmland, trying to find a Disallow or some such to deal with the turn 4 Aetherworks Marvel, or even the Rogue Refiner or something, just to keep them off of it for a little bit. We'll see what our opponent has in store for us, should they ever decide to make a play. Alright, so is just an Attune with Ether. Going to find maybe an island or just a forest. Okay, so maybe they could just be red-green. I actually would very much like that. Playing things like Glory Bringers and Hydras, I guess, our Blessed Alliance is good for. So Censor is a pretty good draw here. Go ahead and play the Plains now that they already knew about. Our lands come into play untapped, except for more Irrigated Farmlands, but that's just fine. We can cycle those away. Probably going to censor a Tireless Tracker if they play it, or something else. Okay, there's the Servant. That's just fine. So if they have 5 mana, that does open the door to a Glory Bringer next turn, which we don't really need to hold up Censor for. We can just glare it easily enough. This Greenbelt Rampager, however, do we want them to have the 3/4? I think we can afford to just go ahead and cycle that. Keep as many creatures off the board as possible so this Blessed Alliance can sneak in there when they have like a Hydra of some kind. Alright, another Censor, so makes it easy enough. We'll try and use these as a straight counter spell whenever possible, but I would expect as the game goes on they're just going to turn into draw a card. Alright, another Tomb with Ether, no problem with that. Another Forest. I do like our opponent's choice of basics here, from Alpha, Beta, and Revised. Christopher Rush, very talented artist. If they attack with a Servant, probably just going to glare it. We've got an extra one. Might as well knock down one of their pillars of ramping and whatnot. Hold up a Censor, make it that much stronger. If they go for a Hydra here, probably could just censor it. Okay, Ronas, that is interesting. That's going to have to be Blessed Alliance at some point, so unfortunately cannot censor that. That's just fine, though. We could have cycled the Censor looking for a Disallow or something, but we'll see if they go for an attack here. Okay, they're not. So they're electing to maybe keep up perhaps a combat trick, like a Hexproof or something. Blossoming Defense, I believe it's called. So let's just go ahead and censor. Going to find maybe a board wipe or something at some point. Pull from tomorrow, that's good. Alright, so we do have a game plan now. We want to survive as long as possible, pull for as many cards as we can, and be happy. I do like our situation here where our opponent can't really attack with Ronos unless they use their mana to pump the Servant, and then by attacking with it, that's yet more mana they're depriving themselves of. And then we've just got 2 Immolating Glares that they likely will run out of tricks before we run out of answers. And in a couple turns, we'll be able to restock with a pull from tomorrow. The dream would be that they just pump and attack, we Immolating Glare the Servant down, and then Blessed Alliance have them sacrifice Ronos, but I can't imagine it's going to be that easy. It's probably a trick, or maybe a Glory Bringer coming, that would be just fine as well. Glare the Dragon, sacrifice a creature. Probably not going to pull from tomorrow, even if they do virtually nothing this turn. We want to try to pull for 4, maybe 5 if we can. But we are getting to the point where we can likely just chain card draw into card draw and have sufficient answers. So this is not a teamer deck from the looks of it. It is straight red-green, so I feel very optimistic about that. So get some energy, can pay energy to +1/+1 and trample, just fine with us. Nothing special, gets eaten up by a Fumigate at some point. They can just pay an energy now to turn on Ronos instead of using their valuable mana. That'll be very telling if they elect to do that, rather than pumping the Servant. There'd be really no reason to do that, because tapping down their Servant takes it out of combat either way, and makes it a 4/4 temporarily, but without any mana up to represent a trick. So just going to pump Ronos himself. That is just fine with me. So very happy about that. We can probably eliminate a number of tricks from our opponent's hand. Maybe they have another Ronos, but no reason not to gain some life while we're at it. Sack a creature, and we'll gain some life to offset a hit or 2 from a creature. It's one way to deal with indestructible creatures, the other being cast out or even a Declaration in Stone. Okay, and a Disallow, just in case anything goes wrong. So we've got all the answers now we need, really, and a pull from tomorrow, so I think we're in excellent shape this game. Thinking ahead to our sideboard, if our opponent doesn't actually see any creatures to like leave in their Harnessed Lightnings, I can't imagine they're going to take those out. They probably don't have very many sideboard cards. They'll just hang on to them for the energy. Not going to stop that. Then we might be able to bring in some of our own creatures to hold off theirs, such as Thalia's Lancers or Linvala. Ooh, okay, the Pummeler deck. Excellent. So, could just disallow that now. We could also pull from tomorrow looking for our top 4 cards, looking for one of our 2 Fumigates. We've got plenty of ways to deal with the Pummeler as long as they can't give it hexproof multiple times. We got the counterspell if they can, so I think I'm fine letting that resolve. We'll take 5, 6 damage maybe, depending how they want to do this, and then we just pull for 4, and if we wipe the board, it's pretty much lights out. Okay, they're not going to bother attacking. That's curious, but I guess I won't complain. Definitely going to pull here. Alright, did not find what we needed, unfortunately, but I think we can safely ditch a land here. We could even illuminate into another at some point. Alright, kind of just want to deal with the Pummeler now. They did leave back the Servant for 1 mana. They might be able to then deal with our cast out here. We could also Declaration in Stone. I think we do want to get the 2 off the board. With our 6 mana, we can Declaration in Stone, and that taps them out. We can cast out the Pummeler. I think we want to do that. So let's just go ahead and get rid of the Servant now. They do get a clue off of this, unfortunately, but I think it's preferable. And they didn't even bother tapping for mana. Cost of energy. With 2, maybe 3 cards in hand next turn, maybe 4. How likely are they to have 2 Blossoming Defenses? Because if they go for all the pumps, then we can definitely get them pretty well. And if they don't do anything, then we can just Illumination, draw some lands, hopefully. Yeah, let's just go ahead and pass for now. I don't think they're going to have that many Blossoming Defenses. That could be famous last words, but with any luck, we'll be able to Immolating Glare. They go for the protection spell, Immolating Glare again. We'll see what happens though, going right to the attacks. Oh, I see. You can only expend energy when this creature attacks. So, okay. I think we might definitely go into blocks. We might pause on their damage step if they choose not to pump the pummeler, and then we can just blow it up later. Okay, so they are going to make it big. Sure. See how much energy they're willing to pump into this. As long as they don't have two blossoming defenses, we should be able to get one or so cards out of their hand and kill their biggest threat. We'll be taking 6, going down to 18. We'll have a handful of counters and some more answers, so I feel pretty good about that. I think at this point we are kind of priced into going for the glare though, which is a bit more damage than I can stomach. Okay, so they're going for 1 pump. If they go for the second, that would be lethal. And they do. Alright, let's try and respond with a glare. I assume they go for blossoming defense here. Okay, that's excellent for us that they're digging for 1 in the first place. Then we can actually just blow up one of their other creatures too. No reason to hang on to this if don't need to. Alright, that's perfect. And we may as well just take out the Brawler here. Tapping us out. Opponent just spent 6 of their energy for nothing. They've got 3 cards in hand. Maybe play a land here. Nope, not even that. Okay. I think, unfortunately, we can't play the Illumination and guarantee a 3rd land for a Disallow, so I'll just go ahead and play out our farmland here, even though we could cycle it. We're under no pressure. We're going to draw 2 cards this turn, and if we must, we can always just counterspell whatever our opponent goes for. Okay, Long Tusk Cub, no problemo. Going to hopefully find a Fumigate or a creature that can deal with that. Okay, Duskwatch Recruiter is a bit more obnoxious, but we can just cast it out if we have to. I think I will go for the Illumination here, though. Alright, Negate, not the best draw, but we'll just cast out the Recruiter before they go to get their card back. 1 card in hand, I think we're in very good shape. Alright, with a Glimmer, even more so. So let's go ahead and rattle 1 off. Take care of their card draw engine. Now we've got counters for days. They've got 2 threats on board, so they're going to be taking a hit here, and they're going to get their energy back, but once we Glimmer to set up our next 2 turns or so, possibly a Fumigate into like a Pull from Tomorrow the following turn, I don't see any way that our opponent can really get back into this game. Just taking 5 here. Right, time to draw into some action. They play out their last card, they decide not to. Okay, Negate we can definitely do without, but I will keep it Anticipate. Another land. Okay, so we do actually need to find something to do with all this mana. Our top 3, any luck? Okay, 2 Fumigates, unfortunate. We can safely rely on the assumption that we will not be casting Fumigate again this game, but that's okay. Won't be able to disallow their follow-up threat, which does leave us kind of empty-handed then. So if we wait 1 more turn, they can pump this up to a 4, hit us for 7, but then we get to sweep them away. So I think we actually do have to hold on 1 more turn, just in case they top-decked a Tireless Tracker or a Glory Bringer or something. We would want to actually be able to deal with it. Currently we cannot. So I think it's fair to hold on to the Fumigate. Don't really have to worry about burn or anything. I guess it is important to recognize. What does this do exactly? It gives trample and pumps and trample. So that's really not anything to do with haste or anything like that we worry about. Opponent might just start pouring counters onto the Long Tusk Cub. That's fine. Okay, just taking 7 down to 6. They get their energy back. And if nothing happens, just going to Fumigate, hope to draw a pull from tomorrow and win the game. Okay. Probably just going to end up cycling, but there's nothing for 3 besides like a Kefnet that we would really want to play this turn, and we can definitely just wait, cast him next turn if we find him. No need to cycle now. Our opponent probably just has a useless trick in hand or another land, something like that. Okay. Forsake the Worldly is a good answer to Pummeler, but not in any danger for one right now. We just want to find a way to win the game. We're having a bit of trouble doing that, unfortunately. We've gone through half of our deck without finding a creature or our second pull from tomorrow. Sometimes that's just the way it is. But sad as it is, I will actually deal with a cub with a counterspell here. That can kill us rather quickly if we're not careful. Although now with the Immolating Glare, I kind of wish I hadn't. Still in the same position, just got to find a draw spell or a threat before they draw too many threats of their own. Gisela, not the best, but definitely will do. Probably just going to eat a Harness Lightning here, which will just negate right back. But I would have to guess they have, maybe not. Figured they had a removal spell in hand or something as their last card. Can't just be like as many lands as we have. I kind of feel for our opponent, honestly. There's a lot of lands to have drawn. Okay, let's just go ahead and anticipate into a Kefnet or a Bruna, perhaps. Okay, I'll take the Glimmer. May as well cast it. Declaration. We've got a threat on board, so more counterspells is just fine. I can't imagine that we really need to counter twice, but I love hitting my land drops, so I'll go ahead and do that. Alright, so we've been through about 2/3 of our deck. We managed to finally find a threat, and our opponents had enough, so pull from tomorrow next turn, that would have definitely been the nail in the coffin. Alright, so what do we do against our opponent's energy pummeler beatdown deck? I think a Fumigate is definitely good here. Jace is pretty decent at resetting the board somewhat. We didn't really see any Glory Bringers or any hasty threats, so can come down, bounce an opponent's creature back to hand just fine. Commit to memory. Ceremonious Rejection doesn't really do much but hit the pummelers, and we've got many ways to deal with them elsewhere. So I don't think we really need to worry about that. I will keep a Dispel in, actually, just as a way to fight against, on the draw, to fight against our opponent's pump spells and potentially hexproof granting spells. I don't think we really need all these negates, however. Maybe just one will do. Linvala is always good to come back from the brink of death, but may not be necessary. Kefnet we can do without. Opponent can just trample over with Ronos or the modal give creatures trample spell. So what do we actually not need here? Maybe we can do without the commit to memory, actually. Could just be an expensive counter spell that we don't really need. Mostly we're just trying to get to 5 mana so we can Fumigate and reset the board, and then deal with our opponent's threats one by one. Maybe just a single Forsake the Worldly. It mostly is just going to be cycling, but there's a chance we can get lucky and catch a pummeler with it. Don't really need a Lancer. They are fine. But I think even being this threat light, just the Planeswalker and the 3 Angels may be enough to win. Let's be a little more cautious than that. On the draw, I think we can shed some of these Censors. Let's go for a couple of Thalia's Lancers and a single Linvala. See how this works. Alright, so what are we hoping for on our opening hand? 3 or 4 lands is always good. Anticipate, I'm always happy to see, and the Fumigate. Anticipate to get our 5th land. Got a Gisela to buy us time. This is pretty much the ideal hand. Without early interaction, we can at least sustain, hold the board with a Gisela into a Fumigate if we have to. So I think we'll happily keep this. Right, No turn 1 play for our opponent, and we even found a Declaration in Stone emergency button. Nothing to do on turn 1, so I'll just play the only land in our hand that's guaranteed to come in tapped currently. And Servant of the Conduit, Long Tusk Cub. Opponent's got lots of plays here. Okay, there's the Cub. I think we can just declare that. Our opponent will likely be unable to do much damage with the single clue this early on. I don't want them to get their energy train rolling that quickly. So they either have to take a whole turn off to crack this clue or keep playing their threats and just have it wait until later. And that's fine either way. Keep the board clean. Our opponent maybe even stuck on lands and they're searching for one now. That is the case. Wow, okay. So that is highly unfortunate for our opponent. Wow, top 10 cards, and they presumably kept a 2-lander, and they can't even find their third with our help. Okay, there they go. So we should have a game here, although our opponent did just lose their third turn there. Alright, Serpapard, we'll just fumigate that at some point. Not a big threat. Okay, we've got pretty much all the answers we can need against it. I think out of all these three, Alliance is definitely the best. They can't shield against it. Gives us life next turn. We'll just eat the Serpapard, so sure, that'll be just fine. I'm going to elect to do that instead of the Gisela. If our opponent wants to deploy a bunch of threats this turn, we can just fumigate them away. I'd rather cast the Fumigate before playing our valuable Angel here. This card would be much better if it had Flash, but as it stands, it's just kind of a neat little sideboard card, not really all that threatening. We'll go ahead and use up our mana this turn. It matches up quite poorly against Gisela, which we could have played, but I think just eating our opponent's creature, kind of forcing them to deploy a bunch of threats and then sweeping them up is best here. We also have a Westvale Abbey that we can use to good effect. Opponent's still searching for those land drops, so presumably they've got like six spells in hand. That might be a bit to slog through, but I think we're in pretty good shape here. Okay, just a Rampager. No energy, that's good for us. And we even found the Bruna. Okay, in that case, I'm more than happy for our opponent to kill our Gisela somehow. This will hold off the Rampager without some kind of assistance, and we can always just leave it back to attack and recuperate our life. We don't even have to risk it in combat. And if our opponent does have the Harness Lightning, which they did, unfortunate, we can just Bruna her back in 2 turns anyway. We have all the lands we need, so we've got the game plan. And if we resolve a Bruna, our opponent's pretty much dead. Bruna into a Brazella, and they can't kill either. Okay, Hydra, that is perfect. Just going to Fumigate. Going to take 3, down to 21, and gain 2 life right back. Our opponent is in a great deal of trouble here. This is pretty much the deck that ours is designed to beat. Just playing lots of board wipes and efficient removal without a whole lot of targets for our opponent's removal. So this is a little alarming, actually. The Pummeler, even with the Bruna, they can still use this twice. How easily can they pump its power beforehand, though? This might be risky. I'm just going to go ahead and actually cycle this, our top 2 cards, if we can find a counterspell or some kind. We might just actually wait here. Ugh. Can we actually lose to a Pummeler when our opponent can't even cast spells that cost 3 or less? This does pump its toughness, unfortunately, so even with the first strike, our opponent could just trample over us, but what can they even cast besides like Hydras and Glory Bringers? I can't even think of anything threatening, really, so let's go for it. If they give us a turn here, then they're just pretty much dead, especially with only 2 activations on the Pummeler. We can just offset the life loss from a single swing of Bruna, or Brazella, I should say. Our opponent tapped too low, cannot use their Harness Lightning this turn. I think this is fairly safe, but that is a little scary. Pummeler can get out of hand quite easily. But with any luck, our opponent will be stranded with a whole bunch of spells they can't cast, short of like a useless Hydra or something that we can easily deal with. We've got to draw a spell even to find counters or something. So I think we're in great shape here. We'll see what our opponent can muster. But without a way to generate that 9th energy and no way to really pump the creature's toughness in the first place to get the doubling effect rolling, they're kind of low on options. So with any luck, we'll be moving on to match 3 in a moment here. Alright, Gisela is in play. Let's see if they can deal with that. 2 pumps. So currently the stands is a 4-4. And that'll do it. Alright, our opponent did not have any way to deal with Gisela. So on to match 3. Stay tuned, everybody. Thanks for watching.